Sometimes, the very people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who teach you how to walk away first. My name is Emily. I'm 27. And this is the story of how I had to cut my own parents out of my life, just to learn how to love myself and protect those I love. I know it sounds harsh. Saying, I cut off my parents, sounds cold. But the truth is, before I cut them off, I asked, I begged, I waited, for respect, for empathy, for boundaries. But what I got was silence, or worse, laughter. They call it freedom. They call it open love. They call it a modern family. But tell me, what do you call the moment your mother hands your newborn baby to a stranger, without even looking at you? What do you call a family dinner, where your father makes sexual jokes with another couple, while your husband swallows hard, and your sister quietly leaves the table in tears? This is not a story against open relationships or personal choices. This is a story about violated boundaries, about what happens when the people you love choose others over you and forget you in the process. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own family? Have you ever tried to protect your child from their own grandparents? Have you ever thought about saying goodbye before regret comes too late? This is my story, and maybe it's a mirror of yours. Drop a comment below. Would you forgive if it was your father lying in that hospital bed with a failing heart? Or would you keep your distance, even if it meant never getting to say goodbye? Because it didn't start with the hospital. It started long before that. The day I realized their love had room for everyone except me. Won the illusion of an open family. They said they were building a new kind of family. One without secrets, without shame, without limitations. And for a while, I believed them. I was 19 when I first learned that my parents were swingers. I had just graduated high school. They sat me down in the kitchen one evening, casual like it was a dinner plan, and said, Emily, we're not like most couples. We love freely, and we want you to understand that. I nodded. I smiled. I said I was happy they were honest with me. Because that's what a mature daughter is supposed to do. Right? But deep inside, something cracked. Not because I judged them, but because I wasn't ready to lose the parents I thought I knew. At first, I tried to be okay with it. Tried to act like it didn't bother me when strangers came to family cookouts and left with lipstick stains on my father's collar. Or when I'd walk past the fridge and see a calendar that didn't mark birthdays or anniversaries, but which night's mom was sleeping in someone else's bed. They called it transparency. I called it exposure. They said, we want you to feel like this is normal. But normal isn't watching your mother kiss another man while your father cheers from across the room. Normal isn't being told, don't be so uptight, sweetie. Love isn't always monogamous. It wasn't just about sex. It was about how our family stopped being a family and turned into a community project where I was the outsider. They had this couple, Daniel and Teresa. D&T. Young, attractive, loud. They laughed too hard at my dad's jokes. They called my mom, babe, like they owned her. They referred to each other as your second parents. And my parents let them. Worse, they encouraged it. One afternoon, I brought my boyfriend home to meet my parents. We were both nervous. I baked lemon squares. He wore a button-up. We were hoping for support. Instead, we walked in on D&T giving back rubs on the living room floor. My mom waved at me like nothing was wrong. My dad grinned and said, honey, don't be a stranger. Sit. Join the love. I could feel the heat rise in my face. My boyfriend didn't say a word the whole evening. He never came back after that. That night, I cried in the bathroom. Not because of shame, but because I missed my mom. The version of her who used to pack my lunch, braid my hair before school, and whisper, I'm proud of you, after piano recitals. Now she just whispered things like, T and I are going shopping for lingerie tomorrow, want to come? I tried. I tried to accept their version of family. Tried to believe that love could look different and still be love. But what they had wasn't love. It was absorption. There was no space for my boundaries. No room for silence. No room for anyone who didn't fit their narrative of evolved. My sister, Rachel, felt it too, especially when she got pregnant and moved back home with her fiancé. At first, we thought it'd be temporary. They'd stay in the basement. Dad even said he'd baby-proof the stairs. But when D&T lost their apartment, my parents gave them the basement and shoved Rachel, her fiancé, and her newborn into a tiny 12 by 12 room upstairs. That's when things started to break. Not explode, not crash, just fracture. 1,000 tiny paper cuts across something that used to be whole. I remember standing at the top of the stairs that night, watching Daniel carry in his giant gaming monitor, while my sister tried to rock her crying baby to sleep, in a room barely big enough for a crib. And my mom just said, "We're all family here. Everyone needs to make sacrifices." But somehow, we were the only ones bleeding. They didn't see it, how their version of love was swallowing us whole. How open didn't mean inclusive. It meant no room left for anyone who asked for space. And maybe the worst part was this. We didn't walk away because they were poly. We walked away because we were erased. But things didn't stop there. Because one day, someone called themselves Grandma to my niece. And that was when we realized this wasn't just about their love life anymore. This was about legacy, about roles, about what it means to be a parent, and what it means to be replaced. To be continued in Part 2, The Basement Betrayal, when grandparents choose strangers over blood. There are betrayals you expect. And then, there are the ones that knock the air out of your lungs. This one? It came wrapped in baby blankets and screamed at 3 a.m. from a 12 by 12 room upstairs. My sister Rachel was 6 months postpartum when it happened. She was exhausted, barely sleeping, barely eating, still bleeding. Her fiancé, Mark, worked nights at a grocery distribution center. The only job he could find after getting laid off during COVID. They moved into our parents' house thinking it was temporary. Just until they got back on their feet. Mom promised them the basement. Dad said they'd help with the baby. They even smiled when Rachel cried from relief. But all of that disappeared. The moment D&T said they lost their lease. They didn't ask. They didn't wait. They just told Rachel and Mark, "We're moving downstairs. You can use the guest room upstairs." Guest. That's what they called her. In her childhood home, the guest room was barely bigger than a walk-in closet. There was no space for the crib, the changing table, the stroller. They had to shove things against the wall just to lay down a mattress. And the baby? She cried. All the time. Because that room didn't have insulation. Because someone always walked too loud on the floor above. Because love doesn't echo well in spaces that small. I remember visiting them one afternoon. Rachel hadn't showered in 2 days. Her eyes were hollow. She whispered, "Emily, I feel like we're being punished for having a baby." Meanwhile, downstairs, Daniel was setting up a gaming PC. Teresa was reorganizing the wine shelf. Mom was making sangria and blasting Fleetwood Mac. You'd think they were guests in a resort, not freeloaders in someone else's home. And then came the last straw. It was snowing. A full-blown nor'easter. Mark's car was stuck downtown at work. Rachel was home alone with the baby. No food in the fridge. No one had shoveled the front steps. She called Mom in a panic. "Can you come upstairs? Just for a bit. I haven't slept. I need help." And Mom said, with zero hesitation, "Sweetie, we're playing Mario Kart with Daniel and Teresa. Can it wait? Can it wait?" Like postpartum depression waits. Like newborns wait. Like daughters wait. For mothers who never show up. That night, Rachel packed a bag and texted me. I don't feel safe here anymore. Not physically, not emotionally. I drove an hour in the snow to get her. And when I walked in the door, there was Mom, laughing with Teresa, a glass of red in her hand. Dad didn't even look up from his phone. No one said goodbye. They didn't ask where Rachel was going. They didn't ask if she had somewhere to stay. They didn't offer help with diapers, or formula, or anything. But you know what they did do? They posted a photo the next day. Daniel holding a glass of champagne. Teresa kissing Mom's cheek. Caption: Our cozy new basement with the best people on earth. No mention of Rachel. No mention of the baby. Just replacement. Polished and filtered for Instagram. And then the worst part came. They started calling themselves Grandma T and Papa D. They used those names in front of Rachel's daughter. They corrected people at gatherings. They even gave the baby a blanket that said, "Love from your second Nana." Rachel was shattered. She told them, over and over, she has grandparents. Real ones. You are not them. But it didn't matter. Because in our parents' eyes, D and T were family. And we were the problem. You know what it feels like? To be replaced? Not by strangers, but by your own parents' new playmates? It feels like being erased. Like your history no longer matters. Like biology is nothing when narcissism is involved. Rachel moved in with us after that. It was tight, noisy, chaotic, but it was ours. No calendars with bed-swapping schedules. No performative love. Just 3 tired adults. And one baby, trying to breathe again. But peace didn't last long. Because just when we thought we could rebuild quietly, Mom called again. And this time, it wasn't about Mario Kart. It was about vacation plans. And how, of course, D and T would be coming too. To be continued in part 3. A vacation that wasn't ours, when shared beds replaced shared memories. Kich ban 5 phut, chuan tts, jiang ke sao, cham, nu diem dung kam suk, choyan mak muat. It was supposed to be our first vacation. As a family. Not just my parents. Not just my sister. But all of us. Together. For once. We had never taken a real family trip before. Growing up, my parents were always too busy. Or broke. Or trying something new in their relationship. So when my husband, Noah, and I offered to help cover part of the cost, and Rachel agreed to bring the baby, it felt like we were finally reclaiming something. We picked the destination together. We made a group chat. We even ordered matching t-shirts for the flight. We wanted this to be healing. A chance to reset. To create new memories. Away from the calendar full of bed swapping. And the constant tension in our parents' house. But then, Mom texted, D and T will be coming with us too. It'll be fun, the more the merrier. Just like that. No question. No discussion. Just a statement. At first, I thought it was a joke. Then Rachel called me. She was already crying. I can't do this, she said. I'm not sharing a resort suite with people who call themselves Nana and Papa to my child. We tried to explain. We pleaded. I wrote the most careful message I've ever sent in my life. Mom, we want this to be just family. A space for us to reconnect. Please respect that. And her reply? They are family. Emily, you girls are the ones being exclusionary. I stared at that message for 20 minutes. And all I could think was, how did we become outsiders in our own bloodline? My husband tried to comfort me. He said we could skip it. Take a trip of our own. He even suggested inviting Rachel and Mark and the baby along. Something simple. A cabin. Just us. But it wasn't about the location. It was about what it represented. I wasn't mourning a cancelled vacation. I was mourning the idea that maybe my parents had already moved on. That we weren't the family they wanted anymore. 2 weeks later, Mom sent me a screenshot. It was a new group chat. Vacation Squad. It had her, Dad, Daniel, and Teresa in it. That was it. No Rachel. No me. I didn't respond. Neither did Rachel. But the day they flew out, Dad texted me from the gate. Hope you girls are happy. The tension's finally gone. We're free to just enjoy ourselves now. We'll send pics. Wish you were here. And they did. Every day. Photos of poolside drinks. Matching towels with D and T's initials embroidered. Karaoke nights. Couple massages. Dinner for 4. One photo hit me the hardest. It was my mother. In a white linen dress I gave her for her birthday 2 years ago. She was standing between Teresa and Daniel. All three of them had champagne glasses raised. The caption read, "Nothing like real love and real family." I deleted the photo. But the damage was already done. I realized something that day. It wasn't that they didn't care. It was that they cared in a different direction now. Their loyalty was no longer to us, but to the people who never had to carry their name, who never cried in their arms, who never asked for anything, but took everything. Rachel never mentioned the trip again. She just stopped talking about Mom altogether. Mark didn't even try to reach out anymore. As for me, I started therapy, because the grief of losing your parents, while they're still alive, is a type of mourning no one prepares you for. I thought we had seen the worst. That the vacation was the final break. But then my son was born. And I realized something darker. It wasn't just about being replaced. It was about control, ownership. Because the day I walked into my parents' house, with my 8-week-old baby in my arms, my mother didn't ask to hold him. She just took him, and handed him to Teresa. To be continued in Part 4, the final line, choosing sanity over shared DNA. They say every person has a limit. A final line, that once it's crossed, there's no going back. For me, that line was my son. He was 8 weeks old. Still smelled like milk and warmth. The kind of fragile that makes you feel terrified just holding him. And yet, he made me brave in ways I never knew I could be. That day, I thought I was ready. I had prepped myself to spend no more than 30 minutes at my parents' house. I told myself it would be civil, quick, safe. But the moment we walked in, I saw her, Teresa, sitting on the living room couch like she lived there, wearing one of my mother's cardigans, drinking tea from the mug I made for Dad on Father's Day, when I was 7. My mom came over to greet us, smiled wide, held out her arms and said, "Let me see my grandson." I hesitated, but I handed him over. Because somewhere, deep down, I still wanted to believe. There was a sliver of grandmother left in her. But then, she didn't hold him. She turned, and placed him into Teresa's arms. Without even asking, Teresa gasped, smiled, pressed her cheek against his tiny face and whispered, "Oh my God, he looks just like his Papa D." I froze. My husband, Noah, reached for my hand, but I couldn't move. I wasn't angry. I was numb, like something inside me just turned off. When I finally spoke, my voice was low, shaking. "Give him back." Teresa looked confused. My mom rolled her eyes. "Emily, stop making a scene. She's just excited." But I repeated, louder this time, "Give him back." And when I took him in my arms again, I held him tighter than ever before. Because suddenly I understood. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a stage. And my son? He was a prop in their performance of the perfect progressive family. I stood in that living room, surrounded by people who shared my DNA, but not my values. And I realized something. Being related doesn't mean being safe. Blood doesn't mean belonging. And sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is leave. My mom called after us as we walked toward the door. "You're being dramatic. You're going to regret this someday. You'll need us eventually." But I didn't turn around. Because what I needed was peace. And they were the noise. That night, I blocked their numbers. I deleted the family group chat. I told my therapist everything. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. The grief didn't come all at once. It came in waves. The first time my son laughed, and they weren't there. The first time he crawled, and I had no one to text the video to. The first holiday without the loud kitchen, or the matching pajamas, or the passive-aggressive toasts. But with every wave, came something else. Stillness, clarity, freedom. Rachel and I grew closer than ever. We made new traditions. Family brunches on Sundays. Game nights that ended in spilled juice and belly laughs. Nothing fancy. Just real. And real was enough. But peace has a way of being interrupted. 9 months later, I got a text. From a number I didn't recognize. It was my mother. Your father has been diagnosed with heart failure. If you want to see him, it has to be soon. Just like that, the boundary I built started to shake. And suddenly, I wasn't sure anymore. Was cutting them off self-protection? Or punishment? And if my father dies, will I live with peace? Or with guilt? To be continued in Part 5, A Failing Heart. A Shattered Daughter. When regret arrives too late. Grief doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't knock. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just arrives. Sometimes, with a text message. Your father has heart failure. If you want to see him, it has to be soon. Mom. No, hello. No, how are you? Just 6 words. That split my chest open. I stared at the message. For what felt like an hour. My son was playing on the carpet in front of me. Noah was making lunch in the kitchen. And yet I couldn't move. Because suddenly, everything I'd been so sure about, the boundaries, the distance, the healing, started to blur. How do you protect your peace when the people who broke you are now the ones dying? That night, I didn't sleep. I kept seeing 2 versions of myself. One, strong, firm, safe. The other, standing over a hospital bed. Too late to say goodbye. Too broken to forgive. Too shattered to rebuild. Rachel came over the next day. I told her everything. She held her coffee mug tight and said, "You don't owe them closure. They never gave it to you." But then she looked down. And added, "But I understand if you need it for yourself." Noah didn't say much. He just hugged me longer than usual. And said, "Whatever you choose, don't carry it alone." So I went. Alone. I didn't bring my son. Not because I didn't trust them. But because I didn't trust myself. To stay calm. If they crossed one more line. The hospital smelled like bleach and false hope. Room 318. Dad was asleep when I walked in. Pale. Smaller somehow. Like all that arrogance had finally deflated. Mom was there too. Teresa sat beside her, holding a smoothie. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Mom looked up, surprised. "You came." I nodded. Didn't say a word. She reached out, tried to hug me. But I stepped back. "I'm here for him, that's all." Teresa scoffed softly. Mom said nothing. I walked to his bedside. Just stood there, watching the man who used to lift me onto his shoulders at the county fair. The man who used to braid my Barbie's hair. Because he said, every dad should know how. And yet, the same man, who watched my baby get passed to a stranger. Like he was a prop in someone else's show. My chest tightened. I whispered, "You hurt me, Dad, more than I ever thought you could. But I still remember the version of you that made me feel safe." And I needed to say, "I miss that version." He stirred, opened his eyes slowly, and then, for the first time in years, he said my name, "Emily," and I broke. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask for forgiveness. But in that moment, he looked at me, with the kind of eyes that said he knew, maybe not everything, but enough. I stayed 10 minutes. No more. On the way out, my mom tried to hand me an envelope. Just something we wanted to give you. I didn't take it. I just looked at her and said, "I don't want things. I wanted boundaries. And you never gave me those." And I walked away. Outside the hospital, the air felt different, sharp, heavy, but clean, like something final had happened. Not forgiveness, not reunion, just clarity. That night, I held my son while he slept, kissed his forehead, and promised myself, this ends with me. He will never have to choose between his peace and his parents. It's been 6 weeks. Dad's still alive. Barely. Mom keeps texting, more now than ever. But I haven't answered. Because some wounds don't need conversations. They need distance. And time. But today, I got a different message. From a lawyer. Apparently, Dad left something for me in his will. And I need to decide if I'm willing to open that door again. To be continued in Part 6, Between Forgiveness and Freedom, When You Love from Afar. Forgiveness isn't always a door you walk back through. Sometimes, it's just a window you open. To let yourself breathe again. It's been almost 2 months since I walked out of that hospital. Since I stood by my father's bed and told him what I never thought I'd have the strength to say. I haven't seen them since. I haven't responded to the texts, the photos, the guilt-laced, just checking in, messages. But last week, I got a call from a lawyer. My father had updated his will. Apparently, he left me a letter. Just one. Sealed, handwritten, waiting for me at his lawyer's office. No one knows what it says. Not even my mother. And for days, I stared at that envelope on my kitchen table. Like it was some kind of emotional landmine. Do I open it? Do I rip it apart? Do I burn it and let the ashes be enough? Noah told me to do what brings peace. Rachel told me to do what brings truth. But peace and truth don't always sit at the same table. One night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I poured a glass of wine, sat at the table, and finally broke the seal. It wasn't long, not poetic, not dramatic, just honest. Emily, I never knew how to love you the way you needed. I thought being open made me brave. But maybe it just made me blind. I didn't understand boundaries. I thought proximity was enough. That being in the room meant being in your life. I see now. I was wrong. I hope you find peace. Even if it's not with us. Dad. I cried. Not because it fixed anything. But because it was the first time he ever admitted he didn't get it right. And sometimes, we just need someone to say, I failed you. But I see it now. I didn't write back. I didn't call my mother. But the next morning, I took my son on a walk. We passed by a park I used to go to as a child. The same swings, the same trees, only now, it was my hand holding a toddler. Not being held. I thought of Dad, of the man he was, and the man I wished he could have become sooner. But I also thought of myself. And how far I'd come. From that girl who used to swallow pain. Just to keep the family together. There's power in distance. In choosing silence, not as punishment, but as protection. And there's also love. That doesn't look like reunions. It looks like boundaries kept. Like pain survived. Like peace earned. I still love my parents. But from a place that doesn't cost me my sanity. From afar. Where my voice is mine again. Where my son grows up safe. Where I don't need to explain, or justify, or shrink. To anyone watching this, if you're caught between the guilt of leaving and the grief of staying, you're not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing is not to forgive them out loud, but to forgive yourself for walking away. And if no one's ever told you this before, you can love them, you can miss them, you can wish it had been different. And still never go back. This is not a story about hate. It's a story about limits. About truth. And healing. And if you've ever had to love someone from afar, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand. Thank you for listening to my story. If it made you feel something, anything, drop a comment. I'd love to know. What was the moment you realized that love needs space to survive? Subscribe for more real stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear it.